Yeah, so today we'll cover some topics of macros. Okay, I believe you all have already gone through some of the videos which Akhilesh has shared on the macros. So today we'll cover some basics of macros and some good topics on macros, like how to automate some stuffs. Okay, so some simple examples we'll share in this session. So let me share my screen first.
Vinith, will it be okay if you can switch on your video?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay. So let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So before jumping directly into any example, first of all, let's start briefly on what macros is. Okay, so I believe you already know, but just quickly we'll go through what is macros. So let me open an Excel file. Okay, so what is macros? Macros, as a definition, we can say this is something to automate, right? Automation of any of our tasks work. So basically, we can say it is a subroutine or a sub procedure or steps which are executed in sequence to automate any of our work which we want to do in Excel or any other office products. So, for example, uh, first of all, to enable the macros, we can actually enable this developer tab. By default, this developer tab is not enabled in our Excel when we install the Excel from Microsoft because of security reasons, because macros can contain some harmful codes which without your knowledge can actually harm your system or get any info any details from your system, because it is some code, VBA codes, which is actually executing at the background. Sorry. Yeah. So basically, first of all, to enable this developer tab, if it is not visible on your screen, you can go to File, Options. Under the Customize ribbon, you can see that there is a developer tab. If this developer tab is not selected, you can select it, and once you select it, this developer tab will be visible in your ribbon. Even if this developer tab is not visible, a simple recording of macros can be done from this View tab. Here you can see this macros. Okay, so here you can actually see this view macros, record macros, and use relative reference macros. And in today's session, we will see what these relative references are and how we can use them in our automation. Apart from this tool on the ribbon, you can also record your macros from this button on the left, bottom left corner. This is also a button to start recording your macros. So what does this mean? Recording your macros means whatever steps you perform in Excel, it is all recorded at the back end. And for all those steps, an equivalent code in VBA, Visual Basic, is written at the back end, which later in just one click or on a press of button, it can execute all these steps in one go. That is what macros are. So let's say, for example, I'm just selecting here my cell. And before that, let's say we start recording a macro first. Okay, so first of all, I'll go to Developer tab. I'll click on this Record Macro button and see this pop-up window. Here it says macro name, shortcut key, store the macro in, and the description. So macro name, basically this macro name, you can give the macro name up to 256 characters. And there is a rule for all this. So you cannot start your macro name with any numeric values. It should always start with your alphabets, followed by any numeric value. And you cannot have any spaces in the macro names. So here, let's say, for example, my first macro, I'm giving the name first macro. Then you can assign a shortcut key to it. What will happen if I say Control C? Control C is my default copy function, right? So if I give Control C to this macro, whenever I try to run this control C command in this Excel file, it will override my system defined functions, system defined shortcut key, and it will run my macro first. So it will override your system defined functions. So it is always a good practice. If you're giving a shortcut key, then give a combination of shift. Though you have a lot of shortcut keys with the combination of shift 2, but again, the most commonly used functions will not be overridden by your uh, shortcut key of this macro. Okay, so control shift C I'm giving for this macro, and then you have an option store macro in. You have the default option, this workbook, then you have a personal macro workbook. These are the two options which is very commonly used. Okay, so the main difference between this workbook and the personal workbook is, this workbook is I'm only intending to use this macro in this particular file only, and this personal macro workbook is any file which I open in this system or in this machine, that macro will be available for me to run. Okay, there are
I
a
have
lot
a
of,
question
yeah,
here.
please.
If it is written this workbook, you are saying that this particular file will be taken. And if
Correct.
there are multiple sheets in a in this particular file only, so will it work on that also?
Yes, because all those sheets are in this workbook only, right?
Okay. And
So
how did
this
you
work,
write this shift control plus shift plus C? Because there is
you
only
only
this
need
one
to
line.
press shift. Control is already there. You just need to press shift and any key, any alphabet or any numbers you can give.
Okay.
So you don't need to press control. You just need to press shift and the alphabet C or D or whatever character you want to give. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Description, it's up to you. It's not mandatory. Even the shortcut key is also not mandatory. But description, just to give you a description of what this macro is doing. Okay, so some developers uses this practice to give the brief description of what these macros are used for, and some doesn't do it because they don't want to disclose the logic so that others should not do it, or everyone should come back to me only for any help. So this is up to you whether you want to give the description or not. For example, if I just give a description,
Vineet, I would like to interrupt here. No, sorry.
yeah,
Kajal, initially, try not to assign any shortcuts to any macro, because you may not be aware of all the shortcuts which are there, right? So by
Okay.
mistake, you
correct.
may overwrite the already existing shortcuts. So initially, avoid them. When you start using the macro, it is working fine. And when you need it regularly, then only think of the shortcut keys. Otherwise, leave it.
Okay,
Correct.
fine.
Again, adding to Akhilesh's point, you actually don't need actually a shortcut key always, because you can also assign this macros to your buttons, or in your ribbon itself, you can add your macros. Okay, that again, as a developer type, you can actually add a custom ribbon over here, and you can assign the macros to that ribbon controls as well. Okay, so that
Yeah. So
also
we
I will
need
show
just to
you.
give
Yep.
you a background. Last video which I shared to the group today also, we discussed how to put their macros into the ribbon little bit. Okay. So that part they
Okay.
might, if they have seen the video, they know it. Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, so with this settings, say okay, and the moment I say okay, every step will be get recorded. So whatever actions I perform on the Excel file will get recorded. So I'm saying okay, then if I put my cursor on this cell, okay, and if I say my first recorded macro and say enter. Okay, so I pressed Control Enter. So that's why my cursor is on the same cell. And if I put some formatting to it, this is just to show you what all things we can perform on this. Okay, and I make it bold. So I just performed this many actions on this. And now if I click on stop recording, right now I'm in the recording mode. If I click on this stop recording from here, it will stop recording my macro steps. Or if I can also go to developer tab and click here to stop recording. Okay, so if I click on stop recording, now my first macro is got recorded. So where can I see my macro? Under the developer tab, if you click on this macros list, you can see here is my macros, my first macro. Okay, and if I want to see the code of this macro or edit this macro, you can click on this edit and it will open up the VBA editor window for you. And see, knowingly or unknowingly, you have recorded these many lines of code. So this is on the background, the system is recording or writing all these VBA steps. But one thing you can notice that we have not performed these many steps in actually, we have just formatted few cells with making it bold and putting some border outline, but it has recorded so many lines of code. So the advantage of knowing a little bit of VBA is you can actually customize this codes to your requirement. You can remove the unnecessarily recorded codes from the VBA so that you can optimize and you can make your macro faster. So you will not run any unnecessarily any required codes in the VBA. Okay, but that is the secondary thing. If we don't want to touch up this codes, fair enough, no problem. Okay, so for example, now first thing is, let me delete this section from here. Okay, now if I put my cursor anywhere and if I try to run my macro, whatever macro I have recorded, I just click on it. I can click on it and I can run this macro, or I can use my shortcut key as well. So my first macro and run. See, again, it has done all my steps, whatever I have performed on this cell. So it starts executing from my very beginning. Range of F7 dot select. The first range of F7 dot select is putting my cursor on cell F7. See this F7. First thing is putting my cursor on F7. Then all this selection dot formula R1C1. My first recorded macro is the text which I have put it in that cell. So this formula R1C1 is the system's way of writing the code. If I write this as selection dot value, is also okay with this. Okay, so let it formula R1C1. Okay, my first recorded macro, and then selection dot interior. I have only changed this color code to 65535. So if I say pattern Excel solid is okay, and pattern color index, if I remove it, for example, I'm just showing you if I edit the code a little bit. Okay, and I don't want this borders, line style, none, border Excel edge left. Okay, remaining, let it be there. Now if I try deleting this and put my cursor anywhere, and this time if I press my shortcut key Control Shift C, I have given, I believe. So again, I got the same macro. So that means if you know a little bit of VBA, you can also edit your code to your requirement, and you can remove the unnecessary codes which is being recorded by the system. Okay, and still you will get the same end result which you are looking for. Okay, so this is your simple macro. That means I just wanted to show you whatever you record on the Excel file, whatever steps you perform on the Excel, everything will get recorded there. Now, what if you want, for example, this is not much important, but still if you want to change the shortcut key, here you can see in the VBA code at the top, there is a shortcut key Control Shift C. If I make it as Control Shift D, will the shortcut key will change? No, right? Why? Because you can see this single quotes at the very beginning of the line. This means actually these are just comments or the remarks. Okay, so actually REM is also stand for remark. Okay, so if remarks is given at the beginning of any line or at the end of any line, if you put a single quotes and type anything, they are all considered as comments or remarks, and they will not be get executed. That means this code doesn't make any effect to the macro. So Control Shift D doesn't make any sense. Okay, so it will not change the shortcut key. Shortcut key will still remain Control Shift C if you have assigned at the very beginning. But then what if you want to change that shortcut key, you can actually go to macros list, and yeah, from here you can actually, on the options, you can change it. Okay, so from here you can change it, but as Akhilesh also mentioned, it is not a good practice to assign the shortcut key because you might be overriding any system defined function unknowingly. So it is better not to assign the shortcut keys. Instead, you can assign the macros to the ribbon. Okay, so by default, whenever we are recording any macros, you have seen that when I put my cursor on this cell, it is actually recording. For example, I start recording the macro 2, my cursor is on this cell. Okay, and if I stop recording it, you can see that in the Visual Basic Editor, it has recorded that range of b7.select. Okay, so this range of b7.select, what does this mean? This is actually your absolute reference. You have already seen absolute reference and relative references in Excel. You have used them in the formulas, the $A1 or the $A$1 or $A$1. So this is actually, you're actually making either the column as fixed or the row as fixed. So that is all your absolute references. Okay, and when you simply say A1 or B1 in your formulas, and when you drag it across your cells, actually they are relative, means it actually keeps on increasing, right? Your row is also increasing and columns are also increasing. So here, actually in macros also, you have a concept of absolute references and relative references. So instead of saying the macro that exactly select my cell A7 or B7, or from this cell, if I move to this F10, then instead of saying exactly go to this cell F10, I can also I can also indicate macro that from this cell, just move 2 or 3 rows below and 2 columns to the right. Means with reference to a particular cell, I'm moving the cell, moving my cursor. That is actually relative reference. That is what is this relative references is. So let's understand this relative references with an example first. Okay, so it will be more clear with an example. So I'm closing this file, I'm not saving it, and let me open this absolute and relative example. So here I have a simple Excel file with some data. Okay, so here you can see the data is in columns. We need to transpose this data into rows. So in every data set, this is one set of data, this is another set of data. Okay, so we want to automate it. We want to transpose all this data into rows one by one. So let's do it by the default recording, that is the absolute way of recording the macros. So let's start recording that, and then let's see what challenges we may face. So let's say I put my cursor on the start of the first record. Okay, and then I go back to my developer tab, and then I start recording the macro. So the moment I start recording the macro, I'm in the absolute reference. So here I will say ABS reference. Okay, just for the sake of showing you the automation, I'm assigning a shortcut key, Control Shift A, and I'm recording it in this workbook. So I say okay. So now I'm in the recording mode and I'm in the absolute reference. Unless you select this relative references, you are in the absolute reference mode. So let's compare this. So I'm actually selecting this whole records in one go, or you can also press Control Shift down arrow to select this range. Okay, you copy it and right click over here and paste special and transpose this record. Then delete this record set, delete it, put your cursor on the start of the next record. Okay, and that's it. And I just click on stop recording. Okay, so now you can see the first record is transposed, and the same step is what I want to repeat for the remaining set of records. For the remaining set of records, if I press Control Shift A, no, Control Shift A, no, this is not what I'm expecting, right? My record should come one by one. next to every record, it should keep on adding. So the absolute reference macro is not giving me the result which I am looking for, right? See in the code also, you can see that under the modules, you will see this is in the absolute reference range of A3 to A12 dot select, range of A12 dot select. So this is absolute references. So you will see now when we record it in the relative references, the code is slightly different from this. You will see most of the other lines are same, but wherever you see this range of A3 to A12 or range of A2 dot select or B2 dot select, this absolute references, instead of that, you will see a keyword called offset. Okay, and that actually makes a big difference. So now let's keep this code here and we will compare this code with our relative reference macro. So what I will do, let me delete this records and I will put my cursor on the start of the first record. Okay. Now, when you run the macro, there is no undo. Okay, so you have to be very careful. Once you have run the macro on the system, right now we have only recorded the macro and then we have run two steps to run it on the next records, next two records. Once you run the macro, there is no undo. You simply need to close the file without saving it and then open it again. So always remember that whenever you're trying to run the macro, save your file or save your work so that you don't lose them if anything goes wrong. Or take a copy of your file, test it first. If it is working fine, then put it on your original file. Okay, so now let's record the same step, this time with the relative references. So I will start recording this macro and I will say relative reference. And for this, I'm assigning a shortcut key Control-Shift-R. And in this workbook and say OK. And before I do anything else, I first say use relative references. Okay, so use relative references. And from here, I will repeat the same steps. Whatever I did it in the absolute reference macro, I will do the same steps. So select this range, copy it, right click over here, transpose the cell, and then delete this record and put your cursor on the start of the next record and done. Let's stop it and just disable it. So now this time we have done it in the relative reference mode. Now if I press Control Shift R, Control Shift R, Control Shift R, Control Shift R. Okay, so now I'm getting this data the way I'm looking. Okay, so the way I'm trying to append this records one by one below the last record, it is happening the way I want it, right? Again, before comparing the code, this is again, if imagine if you have thousands of records, will you do it Control Shift R or clicking the button 1,000 times? No, right? You want to automate that part also. So how will I automate that part? For automating that, we will write a simple 2-line of VBA code. Okay, not too much complex, very simple, 2 lines of code of VBA. And for that, what will be our logic? See, after transposing every record, what are we doing? We are putting our cursor on the start of the next record. So if imagine the start of the next record is blank, let's say we are saying that we reached the end of the result, means end of the last record. So we have no more records, so we can stop it. So after transposing every record, if I put my cursor on the start of the next record and that selection is blank, that active cell is blank, then I can stop recording. Else, continue running my macro. Okay, continue running my macro until I reach the last record. So that is my simple logic. So to write that simple logic, I can go back to my macro and under the relative reference, I click on edit, and here, this is my relative reference macro. See, the subs actually stands for subroutine and sub procedure. So whatever you start, you have to end. That is the logic. So this sub is started and this is the end of this sub. So here, after this last line, I put a simple logic because now after stopping here, this is my active cell. So I'll say a simple if statement, if active cell active cell dot value is not equals to blank, or you can simply say empty. If it is not empty, then see if is started, so I will end if. So this is my if statement. So what should I do? I will simply call this macro once again. So it will keep on calling the macro till I reach the last record. So here we go. That's it. So this is the same macro name I'm giving over here. That's it. So now if I press Control Shift R and done. So all my records is transposed properly. So now since I have run this on this file and I cannot have this undo method, Control Z will not work. I'm pressing Control Z, it will not work. So what I did is I have taken some copies of these sheets to demonstrate it once again. So here, if I press Control Shift R, if this is the first fresh record set, if I press Control Shift R, so it runs like this. Now you might have seen that screen flickering. Okay, so it is showing you one by one all this records has been transposed, and if you want to stop that screen flickering and just in one shot, boom, the final result, then you can also add one more line of code at the very beginning. Here you can simply say application dot screen updating equals to false. Okay, that's it. Now, if I run this on this sheet and press Control Shift R, done. So no flickering, only the final result is being shown.
Guys, my
So
personal advice initially keep the screen on. थोड़ा फील आता है कि कुछ हो रहा है, ठीक है, वरना एक झटके में कुछ हो जाता है तो पता नहीं चलता कि हाँ मैंने कुछ मेहनत किया. So that step by step thing, initially it gives you a good feeling. That's my personal.
correct. Yes. So the only thing is, if the code is too huge, like a lot of macros has been called, you can call macros inside macros. And if your macro is too big to execute this, when you apply this application.screen updating, it becomes fast, because otherwise it also takes time of this flickering time. Because you might notice when the macro is too big, then only you will see the difference. But in this case, there's no big difference. Okay, but as Akhilesh has suggested, this gives a feeling that we have done something. Otherwise, in just one click, if everything happens, then you'll see it means what what has been done. Okay, so now let's compare this code. Let's understand this. See, in the first absolute reference code, we also did the same way. Same steps were done. So here, what we were doing, we had put our cursor on the start of this record. Let's put this file. Okay, now let's compare this code. So in the absolute reference, when we are saying A3 to A12, we selected A3 to A12 dot select. Okay, and in the relative reference, it is saying range of A1 to A10 dot select. Okay, so wherever our cursor was, from that select A1 to A10, and here it is A3 to A12 dot select. After that, selection dot copy is okay, fine. Here also we have selection dot copy. The next thing is the biggest thing, range of A2 dot select, because every time it is trying to paste your result on A2. That's why it was overwriting every time when you are running the macro again and again. That's why you're getting some result, unexpected results. But here it is not overwriting on A2 cell, because it is fixed range of A2 dot select. But here it is saying range of offset -1, 0. That means offset row, column. -1 means one row above, and 0 column means same column. So always wherever my cursor is, this is my active cell. So -1 means one row above, and the same column, paste my result. Okay, so that is the big difference. So range of A1, this is not mandatory. This is system's way of writing it, and you can even remove that, doesn't matter at all. So offset -1, comma 0 is enough. So this is actually the big difference it is making. The rest of the code you can see, paste special, same paste special is done over here as well. Again, now it is always saying that 3 to 12, row number 3 to 12. So always delete from 3 to 12. No matter you have already some set of records or not, doesn't matter. I will always delete from 3rd to 12th. But here we are saying no. Active cell offset 1, comma 0. -1, comma 0 means what? One cell above, one row above. And +1 means one row below. That means now I will start from here. That means wherever you have pasted your result, from there, move one cell down, and from there, select 10 rows, 1 to 10. So this is your 10 rows which you have selected, and delete that 10 rows. So that two main lines are making the difference here. So that this one is your absolute references, and this is your relative references. Remaining is all okay. Means final result is, again, the last step is we were moving on to the start of the next record. That means wherever it stops, it actually moves one cell down. That means if it has transposed the rows, then it is just moving offset 1, comma 0. That means one cell down, and select the next cell. Okay, so it puts our cursor on the next cell, and then we keep on transposing again and again. So this is actually recursive call. That means we are calling the macro again and again to repeat this entire procedure till we reach the last record. Okay, so that is your absolute and relative references. So hope you all have understood the main difference between absolute references and relative references, and there are many places where you can use them. This is one simple example to make you understand what the absolute references and relative references are. Clear?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So just to add to what Vinit said, so initially, because most of us are non-programmers, okay, we do not have skills like Vinit. So what we will do, we will try to record the macro for whatever we are doing. And in our scene, we will be thinking that, okay, we need to delete wherever I am 10 lines from there. Okay. But actually the macro is recording A3 to A10 or A13. Okay. But आप ऐसे नहीं सोच रहे हो. You are thinking 10 lines from wherever you are. So sometimes you would need things which are in absolute sense कि मेरे को A3 से A10 तक ही delete करना है. But sometimes you would need कि मैं जहां पे हूं वहां से मेरे को next 10 rows और next 10 columns delete करना है. Okay, like think of a situation. Let's say I need to format a number in a cell into maybe thousands or million formatting apply करना है. Okay, but when you recorded a macro to automate this, wherever you were, Excel has recorded that particular cell. Like when Vinith was recording first macro, it was only focusing on F7. F7 my first recorded macro. जबकि maybe we would be loving कि मैं जहां पर भी हूं, I need to write that text or I need to format that particular cell to 1,000 or million formatting. So there will be many situations where you will need this relative sense कि मैं जहां पर हूं और wherever I am, I need to go down 2 rows or I need to go up 2 rows or left or right, whichever way. So you will need both situations, and in that situation you need to switch off that toggle कि मेरे को कब relative use करना है and when do I need to use the absolute references. Okay, and accordingly macro will start like thinking differently. Okay,
Correct. Okay. So let's take another example of not absolute references. This time we have seen this macro records with a keyword called sub. Okay, subroutine, and this is followed by the macro name, and then there is an opening brace and closing bracket. Okay, and it ends with your end sub. That is your end of your subroutine or your procedure. Similarly, now I want to show you that you can create your own functions in the system. Okay, so that is called user defined functions, and that is also used in your macros only. Means in the VBA you can create that. So let me show you one example of it.
Okay, before moving further, any questions on whatever we have covered till now? Anyone?
It seems just to keep in mind of that the coding is it's looks it's some hard for me.
Yeah, it will be hard. Just try it out. If it like if you are able to understand, that's fine. Otherwise, no problem. Okay. Even I don't know like a lot of macro. Okay. Some of the macros we will give you, which are generic in nature. Anybody can use. Some of the macros will be only particular to your custom situation, what you do. Okay. In those situations, these things will be helpful. For the generic macros, you can use ChatGPT, you can use like the macros which are provided by us. Okay. And you can find it on the Google easily. Okay. Whatever we are teaching here, it is mainly for your custom situation. Okay. So if that can be resolved using the recording, very good. Otherwise, you need help of some expert like Vineet or someone else. Okay. So if you are not able to understand this concept, no problem. It happens with many people. They are like most of us are not from programming background, so it's okay. But let us try if it can help us.
Yeah.
Akhilesh sir, if I'm not wrong, I think the condition for using macros is that all the rows and columns should be same in the same format. Then only we can use this. All the sheets in which we are using the macros.
Correct. So if you are doing something repetitively and the structure is same, okay, structure should be same, then it can be like done by macro or any kind of automation. If the structure or the problem itself is keeps changing every time, then like no automation can happen, whether it is macro or something else.
The same headings we should be deleting, or the rows we are deleting, it should be same, otherwise it will not work, right?
Correct.
Yeah, ma'am, just to add to it, then again, it becomes a little bit more complex. You need to adjust your code accordingly. It means there is two ways of recording your macros. Means there is one is the programming way and the other one is the non-programming way. So the non-programming way, there are limitations. You can only stick to with some limited formats. Like if the formats are proper, then only we will be able to work with that, because when we are recording it, we should have a proper format so that the macro or the system also understands that these steps needs to be executed in sequence. And next time it is a kind of robot and we are providing instructions to it. If the same format appears, the macro will execute those steps and boom, your result is there. But imagine
Otherwise we can
tomorrow.
edit the code.
Exactly, yes. So tomorrow, imagine, because right now in the previous example, there was within every record set, there was one row gap. So now tomorrow, imagine there is in some record, there was 3 blank rows, or there are 2 blank rows in some of the records. Then this same recording may not work. So in that case, there could be different approaches you can take. So first you can take, like, for example, the logic could be, let me bring the same data in the current format first. So what you can do is, let me delete all this irregular blank rows into one single blank row first, so that my previous macro can work. Or you can entirely think of a different logic of handling that irregularity between those records, where in some of the records, they, instead of 10 records, there could be 9 only. But I could use a particular logic that if there is only 9 records, okay, I can only transpose those 9 records on the top row. And if there are 10, then okay, 10 rows, but always it will not exceed more than 10. So you should know the all possibilities of your records which may come to you for transposing or whatever macro you are execute. You need to know all the possibilities. So considering all the possibilities, then you write the macro. If it is simple, same format, simple recording itself can give you the result. Otherwise, you might need to write some VBA to adjust or handle those complexities.
And another thing is, when you will, like when recording a macro can help and writing a macro can help. Obviously for writing, you would need a knowledge, but think of it. Macro recording, you are performing steps which you know how to do it. Okay. What if Excel can do it, but you don't know how to do it? Then you cannot record it, right? For the recording, you need to execute it at least once. And there are many things in Excel which you don't know. So maybe a programmer who is expert in VBA, he might be knowing those codes, what to write to execute that particular step. And like Vineet mentioned that situation, what if the number of rows, the gaps were varying in different sections? So maybe if I was recording, I could have used maybe Control Shift down, because Control Shift down selects continuously until there is a gap, right? And then I can copy that in the transpose manner. And then again, I can press Control Shift down to find the next non-empty row and press Control Shift down one more time to select the data until the next empty row. Okay. So these kind of logics you can apply to some extent. Okay. But if your structure is changing a lot, then it will be difficult for us people who are not programmers. Okay. Then we will seek help from the experts. Okay. So your first target initially should be when to use macros. Use macros for things which are generic in nature. Thousands formatting. Okay. Maybe unhiding all the sheets or hiding every sheet which is not the current sheet. Okay. Or maybe take multiple rows, like if the data is common between multiple sheets, combine them vertically into one single sheet. Okay. So we will try to find generic situations. And as I promised to most of you, that we will give you some of the generic macro codes, so you can just copy paste and make use of them. But there will be many more situations outside that list also. So we need to keep finding macro codes for all those things. Again, one more important thing which Vineet mentioned earlier is macros can be potentially harmful codes, because it's a programming code and anyone can write anything. What if someone writes, okay, lock this sheet and with some random password? How will you unlock it? What if the macro code contains that delete everything in C drive? Okay, there can be so many things. So do not take macros for granted unless they are coming from a trusted source. And try it on a simple or sample data set. Okay, so that you don't lose anything. Okay, and once you have tried and tested, then only use it on your real data set. So that's the question with which we should start using macros. It is not harmful, it will help you, but again, it's like a knife. It can be used both ways, right? To cut the vegetables as well as to cut a human being also, right? Okay, Vineet, continue, please.
Yeah. So here, a simple example. Different functions like your VLOOKUP or sum or any function. These are all predefined functions. For example, sum is a predefined function. Ask you the parameters, you pass them, and then actually, for example, 24 is first parameter I'm passing, and say the next parameter is this, and if I add it, it gives you the result. So this is some predefined functions available in Excel. There are a lot of functions available, but imagine a case where you have your custom requirement, and that custom requirement is not available in Excel by default, and you want to build that formula. Or a simple example I'm giving you, so you can create your own function as well. That is called as user defined functions. Okay, so how you can create a user defined function? For example, if I want to write my own function over here, it will not appear right now. There is no user defined function, so it will not appear here. So first thing is, you can actually go to your developer tab. Okay, so here in your developer tab, you can actually click on this modules, and under this modules, you have seen that the macro starts with the keyword called sub. Okay, so macro starts with what? Sub, and my macro, and enter. So it starts with a keyword called sub and then end sub. Between that, you can write any steps, and it is your macro. Similarly, a function actually starts with keyword called function, and function followed by the function name, my first, or my custom function, say my custom function. And let's say I'm not passing anything, so my custom function. And what is the difference between this macro and a function? Macro doesn't return anything. What does this mean? Return means a function actually gives you a result back, right? For example, whenever you are calling a function over here, sum is result giving a result. If you pass the if you say today is actually giving you a result back. So this is returning back a result. Okay, so this is today's date. Similarly, a function always gives you a result. Now here you cannot call a macro. Macro doesn't gives you a result, means it is not returning back. It is executing some steps. Okay, and in that steps, whatever happens, it is reflected on the system. So it is not returning a single value to it, means as a result to you. So now here I am writing my function to giving you a result back. So whatever result the function will return, that is captured in the same function name itself. So this function name itself is used to capture the result set. So my custom function is equals to, right now if I say 4 is the result, simply to understand. Okay, so I'm not using any other logic for now, but my custom function is resulting a value called 4. Okay, so this is my code. And if I go back to my Excel, and if I write over here equals to my custom function, like the way today we have written, if I say my function, you get the result 4. That means you are it is returning something back. And what if I want to perform some operations on this function? I can perform some operations by passing parameters, like the way you use the sum function. In the sum function, you're passing parameters, right? Number 1, number 2, number n. So similarly, you can create your function also to take some input parameters, and based on that input parameter, give you the result, the final result. So how do you do that? So for that, here we type say a variable x as integer. Okay, and okay, so this is the syntax. I will explain you later. So now it takes an input as integer and returns back an integer. So here, if I say 4 multiplied by x, so whatever input is being passed multiplied by x is your final result. So now if I use this function over here equals to my function, my custom function, and here if I pass this parameter 24 to it, and if I press enter, here you get the result. So if I copy it over here, it gives you the result. Okay, so now this is your custom function. So any logic you can write inside this custom functions. Okay, and means previously when you actually take the functions list from the formulas, the functions list, you will not have this custom functions over there. But now you will see that custom functions is also available, and under the I think in the custom function list somewhere it shows. Okay, so user defined functions list, and under the user defined function list you can see your custom function is also listed over there. Okay, so this is just an example. Like the way you write the macros, you can actually also create your own custom functions, and with parameters or without parameters. Mostly you will write with parameters, because without parameters doesn't make much sense. So you can take multiple parameters. So this is one example of taking one parameter. Likewise, if you put comma and pass multiple parameters over there, then it will give you the result accordingly. Now it is taking integer value only. That means it doesn't take decimal values. So for example, if I make this value as 24.5, the result is same. It is actually taking only the integer values. But what if I want to pass my input as decimals as well, integer or decimal, and the result output should also be integer or decimal? You can make this as decimal. For that decimal, you can see double is the data type. Here also you can make it as double. Okay, and if you go back over here and okay, so maybe 24 point, say, let's say 3 or something, so that we get some decimal values. Yeah, so it gives you a decimal output as well. Okay,
Double
so
is for integer as well as the decimal.
yeah, double can take both. Double is with decimal values. So if there are decimal values, it will show the result in decimal values. Integer is the whole numbers, like negative numbers and the positive numbers, but without decimals. So it will not consider the decimal figures. So it will only take the number figure with before the decimal part. So if it is integer, it will exclude the decimal part of your result, or decimal part of your input value.
So double
But
is
if you
the
make
bigger
it as
category actually. So double can accommodate integer as well as decimals, but actually every integer is, if you add .00, it is a decimal also, right? So that's why it can accommodate both the things.
And there is a lambda function is also.
Yes, Akash. So lambda has come recently only, like last couple of years. The trick which Vineet is showing, okay, can work for complex things also. Lambda, I am not used a lot, but yes, it is a good start for at least simple things. If we have to write long formulas, lambda can reduce them, okay, in the backend. But think of it something like, okay, if any of you have been into the sales or the finance side, when you issue an invoice, let's say you have issued an invoice of 100,000 something, okay, you also want to write it in words, okay, 1,43,543 rupees dot whatever paisa, okay. So those kind of things require a lot, and I think lambda would not be able to help in that situation because it requires a lot of various permutations and combinations. So these kind of custom functions can help in those situations.
Okay, thank you.
See, once you create this user-defined function, this user-defined will appear in the function list. Before creating any function on your file, this user-defined will not appear. So once you create any function of user-defined, it will show up over here, and under the user-defined category, you can see all your custom functions which you have created on the workbook.
Can you repeat it? How you open this dialog box?
Yeah, so you can go to basically from this fx function itself, this fx which you we can see here in the formula bar. When you click on it, you can see this category over here, or you can go to formula tab and click on this fx insert function. Same.
Okay.
So,
any other questions?
seems too nice.
If we want to write any word like January in my 10 multiple sheets all together, is there any other way than macro to write at one go?
Select multiple sheets and then write.
Correct.
With control key or shift key, you can select multiple sheets and then it will appear in every cell.
See, now it is
Okay.
appearing in every sheet.
Okay. And I can merge also. If I'm merging one like a column in one sheet, and if I select all the sheets, then it will be merging in all the sheets.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions? So how was the session, guys?
Very nice.
Session is good. Akhilesh sir, we need more session for VBA or macros like this.
So विनीत को आज पहले बार आने के लिए तो थैंक यू बोले अपन, तब तो वो दोबारा आएगा.
Thank you, Vineet sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And
So-
we need some exercises also so that we can practice from your side.
ठीक है.
Otherwise, we will take it easy.
Yes. So we will give you those exercises. I will ask Vineet to give some homework to you guys. At least 4 or 5 people are always active. Kajal, Tarun, Akash, Funny. Okay, some of the names which I remember. Okay.
Okay.
So we need more and more people who are active, who can help others. Okay. But the activity is good. And we will try to find these kind of resources who can help us learn new things which are not present in my skills at least. Okay. So देखेंगे and let's see. So see, ये चीजें तब पॉसिबल होंगी जब आप बेसिक्स कवर कर लोगे जो ऑलरेडी अपने पास है, राइट? So जितना जल्दी हो सके कोर्स कंप्लीट करो, प्रैक्टिस इट, implement it in your work, find more challenges, and then we will look for other solutions also. Okay.
I have completed almost, but still something is left.
So see, I will not like continue taking the same topics which are already there in the courses very soon. Okay, क्योंकि वो तो है कोर्स में, सीख लो. Unless you have a doubt, then it's fine. But I will not repeat the same topic. What we will do, we will start doing some implementation calls. So we will take maybe one of you, pick their challenges in their work, and then उसका कुछ आउटपुट बना के रखेंगे, ठीक है? So the person जिसको हम अपॉइंट करेंगे, let him prepare the sample data, and then उसकी प्रॉब्लम समझते हैं and उनको implement करते हैं कि how to like bring a solution out of that problem. Okay, so I want to get into that kind of calls, क्योंकि it is very boring for me कि मैं सेम VLOOKUP दोबारा पढ़ाऊं, जो कि मैं वहां पे वीडियो डाला हुआ है which you can watch 10 times. Okay, और यहाँ पे भी मैं वही पढ़ा रहा हूँ, right? I need to get more involved in the discussions, and everyone should participate in that.
Sir, I just wanted to know.
Yeah, Sapan.
There was a ribbon coming up with a tab called developer and add-ins. How is that coming up?
So, Vinit, can you open it because मेरा Excel बंद है?
हाँ, sure.
So you can right click any tab in the ribbon, and then you will see customize.
Here, options. Under options, customize ribbon.
Okay. There is another way. Vinit, can you cancel it?
Yeah.
Right click any tab in the ribbon, main tab, data, formulas, किसी को भी right click करो.
Okay.
Right click and you will see customize the ribbon directly.
Yep.
And then check developer tab on the right side. And it is a one-time exercise. Once you check it, it will stay forever.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Can macro work for two different sheets?
Yes, it can work. It depends on what kind of work you want to do, but it can work with a full file.
I need to copy data from one file to another file.
It works with two different sheets.
Like if your procedure requires copying from one sheet to another sheet, it can record that also.
Okay.
Okay.
Correct.
In fact, it can open a file from a particular location also. It's just that you need that will be a little more advanced, but it can do all the things which you do as human.
Okay. Okay. I will try.
Yeah.
It can work with multiple files opened. You can copy different data from other files as an input. It can copy into the current file. It can do some operations. Then the final result can be saved onto a different folder, or a PDF file can be generated out of it. All this automation means with programming, there is no limitation actually. You can achieve means many things from macros.
Sir, I just
Hello.
wanted to know. I have tried pressing up Alt F11. Then the macros dialog box open, but there is nothing such coming out kind of a where we can write down the coding.
So Alt F11, the moment you press Alt F11, the VBA editor opens up. Sorry, my key is gone. Yeah, so by default, you will not be able to see this modules if you are starting fresh on your VBA editor. So you can actually click on this icon over there, and you can click on module, and then you will see one module appeared on your VBA editor window, and then there you can start recording or writing any macros. Or if you have recorded any macro,
yes,
by default, it is saved in module.
Correct. So if nothing is there for the first time you are doing, then you might face that situation. But if you have tried recording anything, then that module will be created automatically. After that, you just need to copy paste your macro if it is already there with you.
Okay, sir.
Next question.
विनीत सर या अखिलेश सर, आप एडिट लिंक्स के कुछ एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हो, कुछ जो आपको मतलब आइडिया हो उसमें, डाटा टैब में जाके एडिट लिंक्स पे।
Can you share your screen, Akash? Last time you also mentioned, but then I asked for the sheet.
Actually, data is confidential, so
Okay, then show it to me personally, maybe sometime later. Okay. Because we need to have that situation. Edit link is mainly to change the source, but it will be helpful for you if we can see the screen and then help you. Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Akhilesh sir, can you explain that sum of the digits in a cell you gave for homework na? Actually, I used that formula and it worked also, but I was not able to
Okay.
understand properly. Actually, why 2 dashes were there in the beginning of the formula?
Actually, that was Funny's formula. That was not my formula. So, but मेरा भी similar ही था. Main thing was using the sequence. So let me open a file and then show you. Okay. So what happened? I went to Mumbai last week. Okay. And there we got into a discussion that how numerology affects luck and other things. Okay. And people like the discussion was involving the addition of numbers or birth dates, pricing, subclass addition, because then only you arrive to that particular number. So then I thought that, okay, fine. I am not very much interested in the astrology or numerology, but I am interested in the formula to generate this automatically. Okay.
That was a good exercise.
Yes. So I thought of it. I don't know how my screen can be shared. Okay. My screen is visible, guys?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
visible.
So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the number. Okay. Now, Tarun suggested ultimately logic is we need to split all the digits and then we need to add them back. Okay. Now, Akash suggested
Mid function. Yes, sir. Mid function से भी हो सकता.
हाँ. So Akash suggested something like this. Left.
पर wrong है वो sir. वो left से हो ही नहीं
Whatever it
सकता.
is, I'm just telling you the logic. Okay. Left, comma, 1, something like this. So 1 मिल गया. Okay. Then I need to get the second letter. Second letter के लिए I can use mid function. Okay. Mid, and then take the same text starting at second position and only one character. Now I need to repeat this mid for the third character, fourth character, fifth character, like that. Okay.
It's lengthy.
But I don't know how many characters will be there, and I cannot keep changing my input material. So now think of it. I am writing one simple formula, equal mid. I need the original text, comma, and then I need the starting number. Let's start with 1, comma, how many? 1 character. Okay? Yeah. And then my only role is to change this starting position to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to iterate it 5 times or whatever is the length of the function, right? So now then I thought of sequence function. The sequence function, if I write, let's say columns mein 5, it generates those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I write sequence function here, same thing यहाँ पे जो लिखा है, इसको if I copy and put it here, तो अभी mid function will work for first, second, third, fourth, 5 because it has given 4 inputs, right? It will not work because यहाँ पे data already है. So let me put it down. So mid function can give the splitting part. Mid function with sequence, because sequence has given the input, कौन सा character हमको split करना है. Mid function has taken that input and then executed. So हमको 5 values मिल गए. So अभी ये sequence जैसा ही लग रहा है, but let's change the number to something random. ठीक है? Now sequence is just giving this series and mid is using this series. हर एक के लिए अलग अलग वैल्यू निकाल के ला रहा है. Now अभी मेरे पास 5 सेल्स है. I just need to add those 5 cells. That's it. So what I can say, I can sum and close the bracket here. Now थोड़ा बहुत और ट्विक करना पड़ेगा अभी. So one thing which I wanted to keep what we call dynamic was, so Tarun created a formula for 4 digits, right? But then I said it can be any digits, we don't know. So how to make it? Currently I have written 5. So rather than 5, okay, let's
Then लिख सकते ना इसमें length के लिए.
exactly. So rather than 5, we used len and open bracket, take the original cell, close the bracket here. So currently it is generating for 5, but even if it is 3 to 5, वो उसके लिए भी generate करेगा. Even if it is something bigger, वो उसके लिए भी generate कर देगा. After that, we just need to decide what if there is a dot here. Let's say dot is there. So dot भी generate करेगा. Okay. So that double hyphen, or now your only job is to whatever is splitted, add them together. Before adding them together, if we just add it now, dot will create an issue because that is not a number. Okay. So that sum product which Funny used, he was actually taking that binary logic. You remember we discussed true, what is the purpose of hyphens. So true and false converts into 1 and 0. So he was multiplying by 1 if it is a number. If it is not a number, then he was multiplying by 0 or something like that. He was ignoring it. Okay. So that's how. Next logic is just sum them whichever way. So what I was doing before doing it, I will actually use value. Okay. So it was trying to convert each and everything into value. So value में ये आ गया. Okay, error आ गया. So I can maybe try to, I'm not reaching to the exact formula क्या बनाया था मैंने. I can use if error, कि if there is an error, then ignore, then give me 0, otherwise give me the जो भी value generate कर रहे थे. ठीक है. So if error this, comma 0. So अभी देखो dot की जगह 0 आ गया मेरे पास. ठीक है. Now hopefully some function will work, some product वो जो भी है, मतलब it is just an extension. There are different logics. अपना simple problem है sum करना सबको. Sum कर दिया 31. Okay, so what was the process? Splitting. That was the main trick which you were not aware. बाकी सब आप कर लेते. Text functions अपने सब कुछ cover कर रखे हैं. And sequence function का benefit ये है कि it generates a series and वो function को force करता है to go and take the next input and then generate another input in another cell. So that is really like a good like I would say good help. Otherwise हमको macros जैसी चीज use करनी पड़ती थी इन चीजों के लिए पहले. Yes, Akash.
सर ऑफिस 365 पे एक न्यू फंक्शन आया है टेक्स्ट स्प्लिट करके. टेक्स्ट स्प्लिट से हम हर एक सेल में उसको लिख देंगे एंड फिर उनका सम कर लेंगे. तो वैसे भी पॉसिबल है टेक्स्ट स्प्लिट फंक्शन से.
टेक्स्ट स्प्लिट में यू नीड टू गिव अ डिलिमिटर, राइट? यहाँ पे सेपरेटर कैसे बताओगे? सेपरेटर नहीं है ना हमारे पास. इट इज कंटिन्यूअस and that's why position is important and position can be used by mid function. Text split अगर मेरे पास कुछ separator होता है इनके बीच में तो then I could have used.
Okay,
that's the reason. Text function का वीडियो आज ही डाला है, so those who don't know check YouTube or Instagram. Any other questions? So this is what I created, but whatever Funny gave, he used some product. Okay, so that function was a little bit shorter than this, but main role was this. Okay, बाकी इसके बाद आप अपना दिमाग लगाओ, वो सब ज्यादा चीजें आपको पता है इसके बाद वाली. Okay, next question, anything?
डैशबोर्ड रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन है.
हाँ बताइए.
एक्चुअली डैशबोर्ड में टाइमलाइन में मंथ मतलब मंथ ब्लैंक है. समटाइम्स मतलब फरवरी टू मई अगर है और जहाँ पे ब्लैंक है वो वहाँ पे जनवरी दिखाता है.
यहाँ पे ब्लैंक को वहाँ पे जनवरी दिखाता है. वो जनवरी क्यों दिखाता है ब्लैंक को? डू यू हैव द फाइल?
हाँ, एक मिनट में शेयर करता हूँ.
I will stop recording now. Okay.